All right, and Steve is here, so we can start, I guess, right?
We're waiting for him.
Wow, I'm honored.
So hey, just to reiterate, at the start of Playground, it's nice just to say hi to everybody and let you know what we're doing here. A couple of new faces over the last few weeks. Juan Pablo, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. But also these Playground sessions have been a little bit quieter in July, which has been actually kind of wonderful. I like being in a small room and catching up with people. And I was just saying to the first few people on this call, looking ahead next summer, I know it's still this summer right now, but just looking ahead to next summer and taking a little bit of a step back from Playground, I think is really healthy. So we'll keep this going strong for another 10, 11 months. And then hopefully next summer, we'll all feel like we've earned a little bit of a time to step back, but maybe still have some fun together. What we do here every week at the same time at this Playground session is we invite anybody who wants to from the community to give a presentation about something they're working on. Sometimes these presentations are from individuals with an idea that's really in its infancy. And other times we get to hear from established teams. And that's the kind of form that this one is taking today. So Loxe Inc. is back, our dear friends. We've known each other in the Catalyst community for probably more than a year at this point. Started working closely together in the very earliest iteration of Plutus PBL in late August of 2021. And that early Plutus PBL work is what laid the initial groundwork for what is now a developing Plutus PBL course. And we want to take that same model and apply it to tokenomics as well. About 4 months after we started Plutus PBL, we did a similar experiment in tokenomics. And all of that raw material that we created just by trying things together over a period of several months gives us a pretty good starting place for what will be the first iteration of tokenomics. So Eli, Matthias, leaders on the Loxe Inc. team and original members of that Plutus PBL. It's so good to have you guys back, and it's great to hear about the project, and I'm excited for your updates today. Just zooming in real quick, I forgot to go over this part. If anybody here ever wants to present about anything you're working on, and this could be, and Chad, to your point from earlier, feel free to take a slot and do something zany with it. This is a permissionless sign-up system. All you have to do is come to this Miro board right here. I'm going to drop the link in the chat right now, and you can also find it on Discord. All you have to do is drop into this Miro board in the top left-hand corner, find this upcoming Playground meeting calendar. Let's make this a bit longer right now, and we can fill in the dates as needed. But this is what the sign-up process looks like. All you have to do is find the next open date, like September 27th, for example. Drop your name in the middle column and whatever you would like to present about in the last column. So you can see here we are on July 26th with Loxe Inc. You can see what's coming up. And again, feel free to add yourself anytime, no permission needed. You can review what we've covered earlier just to get a feel for what goes on around here. And finally, zooming back out, this is our unofficial Gimbalabs social network right here. Again, no permission needed, but if you'd like to send out your signal to this community about who you are, what you're interested in working on, what you want to learn, and what you can help other people get better at, these cards are a place to do that. So I encourage people to browse through here. And if you don't have a card and just want to send out your signal, feel free to do that. Any questions from everyone about Gimbalabs Playground? Cool. So we can get to the fun part. So usually the way it works is the presenters have as much time as they'd like to give, a more a presentation style kind of talk. And then when they're ready, they usually open up for questions, and we get to ask direct questions to the team, but also think together about some of the bigger implications. And I'm really excited to do both of those kinds of questions today with Matthias and Eli from Loxe Inc. So I'll stop sharing and hand it off to you guys. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much. Wonderful being here. First of all, please let me know. I have a fan running in the background just to cool myself just a little bit. Is the voice level okay? Okay, wonderful.
Perfect.
Great, great. Yeah, very glad to be here. So as the mirror board says, we are here to talk about mediators AI, also known as win-win dispute resolution for all of you who've been around in Catalyst since Fund 6 or so, or even longer. So it's a big day for us. It's been a couple big and challenging months for us. I'm today joined by Eli Selkin. So I took an hour or so to do a little bit of a slideshow until I hand it off to Eli, and then I'll do some more talking, and we'll have time for a Q&A, which I'm looking forward to. But I think it is a big milestone for us. So I'm not sure if the slideshow will be good enough, but things may break. So I'll be sharing some slides here, and let's get started. So my name, as you know, is Matthias Sieber. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Loxe, where we aim to unlock solution potential. And today I'm also joined by Eli Selkin, who is our CTO and co-founder as well. Our remaining co-founder is on vacation. Double thumbs up. Victor Corsino, he's our CEO. So he's been putting in great work as well. So we're here talking about mediators AI, right? And if you need to pay attention, please pay attention to Eli later. So because I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story with some embarrassing photos. Because as you know, right, regular attendees of this fabulous space have seen Eli and myself at previous playground sessions with topics such as ADA-TARME, Deflect, and also revenue share tokens, right? As James indicated, we were also members of the first PPBL cohort and are really grateful for the continued support by James and the Gimbalabs community. So thank you very much for being here and your continued support. As I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, but I tried to keep it brief. So I will not go too far back into inherited generational trauma. That is something that we can discuss another time, but let me share some personal information with you all anyway. So as some of you actually know through Twitter Spaces that we joined together, I also joined the German Army's Division for Special Operations in 2001. And I had the opportunity to participate in a peacekeeping mission in the now called former Yugoslav Republic of North Macedonia. So while the mission had a really huge impact on me, I actually had no fucking idea what the hell I was doing there. At the time I was there, right? So which I would say is typical for grunts, right? But fast forward to 2018, right? As a high school dropout, I had just completed my GED and my first 2 associate's degrees while working full-time as a senior software engineer within a year. And I was fortunate enough to join California State University Dominguez Hills in a program on negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building on a merit-based scholarship. So finally, I could try to do some research and try to make sense of my experiences and get an understanding of the conflict in North Macedonia, the reason why I was there. So I did some independent research and also presented my findings at a student research conference. So that was back in 2018. And this is a screenshot of a slide used at a conference in one of the few photos with me in uniform. Any guesses who I am, left or right? I'm of course a guy with a laptop, my preferred weapon of choice. Nice. So, so I completed my education at CSUDH and then completed a master's degree in dispute resolution at the top national law school in the US. At that time, I had also come up to about 2 decades of work as a software engineer, and I've been in Cardano since 2017. And then at the previous job for social good, I met Eli Selkin, right? And also due to my involvement with Catalyst, I met and started working with Victor Crisino. Those of you who know, right, the first Catalyst circle, I was actually the runner up to the community advisors, veteran community advisors seat. And I'm very happy that Victor got it. I mean, it was in the name VCA, now it's being taken away from here. Right, Victor Crisino de Albuquerque, now it's VPA. But anyway, so the 3 of us, right, Eli, Victor, and myself, we put a proposal that tackles the issues of the mediation industry, right? So, and the aim was also to provide greater access to justice to people who otherwise would not have access to that. So in Fund 6, win-win dispute resolution was the top ranked and also most voted DApp with a budget of 25A worth of ADA. Spoiler, that was not enough. So we had to be creative. But as it became clear that we'll be receiving the funds, we co-founded and incorporated Loxe Inc. in November of last year. So one of the issues we tackle with this DApp is the slow turnaround time in the industry. Because on average, it takes 6 months for parties that already know about mediation and even have agreed on a mediator to get to mediation. So Loxe helps actually settling disputes within 1 week. And we are able to facilitate the resolution of a dispute in such a short period of time by bringing different perspectives together and making use of our network and technological expertise. This particular issue is actually not something that blockchain per se can help, but there are other issues where blockchain actually is necessary that we tackle as well. So we take the party's perspective into account, right? There's a couple of questions that they have to answer. Mediators, on the other hand, we also bring on our platform. We want to essentially know what types of cases they want to mediate, what the rate is, and also what time they want to mediate, right? So that's how we are able to bring them together. And this is really all I have to say for now. I'll come back later, but now I'm handing it off to my colleague and friend, Eli Selkin, CTO at Loxe, who will actually have the interesting announcement. So Eli, please take it away. Still muted.
Yep, there we go. So as Matthias said, I'm Eli, CTO and co-founder of Loxe. I also have a background in things that are not computer science. So I have a license in clinical social worker, in clinical social work. I got my master's in clinical social work, and I got a master's in computer science. And I've always been interested in social good, and I felt that Matthias' great original idea about a mediation platform and later iterations that would transform the legal industry into something that helps, you know, underrepresented or marginalized people access real sustainable help was really a great vision. And so what we're here to discuss is actually mediators.ai. And the subtitle here is What Took So Long? We've been working on this since forever, it seems. And we've had a new number of setbacks. Most of them are not exactly caused by us, but by the state of the systems and the ecosystem in which you can create the smart contracts and get the systems ready for deployment in production environments. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So mediators.ai depends heavily on the Plutus application backend. And if you've had experience in the not too distant past, where IO released the PAB that finally worked and you could interact with testnet and mainnet. But if you could interact with testnet in their documentation, the system took a considerable amount of time to get set up. And so the PAB itself took a very long time to become stable, and was only released, a short time ago, which allowed us to use real wallets, so wallets on either testnet or mainnet. And the reason we use the PAB is we want an automated endpoint that can be used by some system to trigger transactions with a smart contract on the blockchain. And so one major dependency of the PAB is not just a node that you can interact with, because the PAB itself doesn't exactly interact with the node. It interacts with the wallet server, which is a pretty common application to be run, but also the chain index, which is not a common application to run unless you're running the PAB. So the PAB interacts with chain index and wallet server, not so much directly with the, actually not at all with the node that's running. However, in order for the chain index to run, you have to have a fully synced node. And so we get into this cycle of you need the node, the wallet server, then the chain index, then the PAB to work. Syncing the chain index itself is a task on testnet. If you read through the documentation that was put forth by IO when they released the Plutus apps repository that worked, they identified, okay, it's going to take you a few days to get the chain index synced. So the node takes first time running node takes like a considerable amount of time. First time syncing up the wallet server takes a considerable amount of time. Syncing the chain index takes a considerable amount of time. They said 2 days. And it takes about that long on testnet. However, syncing the chain index on mainnet is a almost completely different ball game of syncing. Chain index on testnet takes 2 days. The size of the database that chain index builds, which is a different database than something like DB Sync, which is another tool that builds a database off the node chain index. For some reason, it builds a considerably larger database. So it's like 20 some odd gigabytes for testnet, but when you're syncing on mainnet, it's almost 220 gigabytes. So more than 10 times larger, or about 10 times larger. And you might think, well, it can't take 10 times as much time. And you would be wrong. It can take 10 times as much time. It took us about 2 weeks to sync chain index on mainnet. And this was after we figured out how to exactly make it work, because it's not a simple transition from the chain index on testnet to the chain index on mainnet. So we had, it took basically almost a month for us to get everything up and running in a production environment for chain index. But this was after numerous attempts at trying to create a more modern production environment. So we attempted at first to try a Kubernetes deployment where we had the PAB running in a node, and also the chain index running in that node, and the node running in that node, so we could scale up or scale down instances of things like our backend, but that didn't pan out, because the way that the chain index communicates with the node is, as people are probably familiar with, a node with a Unix domain socket. And Unix domain sockets are kind of a they're an old-fashioned communication technique. They've been around for a long time, but they're used when you need sort of bi-directional networking that can listen for changes on something. This is not a modern technique. It is using TCP, but it's TCP over socket connection rather than a TCP over IP, which you might be more familiar with. The problem with TCP over the Unix domain socket is that you can't really, they don't play well with distributed systems like Kubernetes, and they don't play well even with a Docker stack deployment. And so it was really a considerable challenge to try and figure out what exactly will allow these systems to work. And what we landed on was a virtual machine, basically a system in the cloud. Yes, it's running a containerized version of the node, and yes, it's running a containerized version of the wallet server, but the chain index and the PAB are not containerized on that system, unfortunately. We are working towards another attempt at containerizing everything and running it in a Kubernetes system that has what's called a networked file storage NFS system that will hopefully allow the communication via the Unix domain socket, but we'll see. Anyway, so the long and short of it is we have these VMs that are inefficient because VMs don't make the most use of the CPU on a system or connections on a system, and they are costly. So they are cost inefficient and they are costly. We have the thing running the chain index, the VM running the chain index on mainnet is, you know, like a pretty hefty cloud compute instance, and it is expensive. So if you were to try and run this yourself, you'd be in the hole several $100s, many $100s a month just to bring up the VM, and then you've got this sync issue that takes forever. And so it's basically like a huge burden to get everything up and running. And one of the other difficulties we faced in trying to get everything up and running was that the container images from IO to run the node and wallet server are okay, but you can't run them as a particular user. They are like application wraps rather than like an instance of an operating system that runs the Cardano node. And so you can't use your docker-u whatever user or set up a user in Docker Compose. You have to finesse the container to allow like the chain index to bind to the node socket that the IO container produces, which didn't work. And so we at Loxe Inc built a whole bunch of containers that run as a particular user ID and a particular group ID, so that they can all bind to the socket and the file system that is constructed with the same UID and GID. And so that really helps in terms of being able to run the thing, but these are all complications that happen when you're trying to run the PAB in production. And so it's taken a lot of learning to get to somewhere where it's actually working. And like I said, we are trying to iterate on this. We are trying to make a Kubernetes cluster that actually runs all of the necessary parts to make the PAB a real modern stable system in general. And I think that's all I want to talk about until we talk about the launch. Am I supposed to talk about the launch right now, Matthias?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. So now that we've got the stability, one more thing about the stability. So PAB is great, but it has many flaws. One of the flaws that is still a known problem is that it consumes more and more memory. It doesn't have a stable memory footprint. So every couple of minutes, it's increasing by some percentage of memory usage until your system runs out of memory. And memory management on these cloud VMs is not great. It's not like running it on your system where you can suddenly bring in swapping, use disk space to handle the memory offload. They don't like to do that. There are ways to run bare metal servers to handle that and be more like a regular computer that you might be running at home or in the office, but they have some limitations. Anyway, but the long and short of that is if you've got already a memory intensive program like Chain Index running and you're adding PAB, which will start increasing the memory that it takes, you will run out of memory and the PAB will shut down. And it'll restart and then it'll run out of memory because every slot that it has to back up, it backs up to its own database, but the database is in memory or something. Nobody has actually figured this out yet. And so one way that we resolved this was to create a script that kills the PAB, because we don't need the PAB to really maintain any type of database. We just want the chain index database and the node database. Those two are fine. Our PAB just needs to maintain its database as long as a single interaction occurs. So like everything, it can reconstruct the the script at a moment's notice with some additional data. And so basically it can just lift that data into the script address and you can continue from where you were before. You don't need any long running script instance. We're not doing anything like a game where it has to maintain from a previous instance some counter or some memory of what had happened. So we don't need any of that. We just need an instance or an endpoint that is hit, and then that endpoint does what it's supposed to do, and then we can kill the PAB and restart it with an updated slot to start from. So we can delete the database, we can restart the PAB and have it just sync up to whatever is the most current slot. The benefit of this is we never run out of memory. The downside to this is you've got to kill your PAB frequently, every couple of days maybe, or possibly every day, depending on how large these slots or how many transactions these slots are having. And then you've got to delete the database, and bringing up the PAB doesn't take very long. But if your PAB runs out of memory and your chain index also stops on a VM, that's pretty significant. If they both run out of memory, then the whole system freezes and you've got to restart everything. So the way to handle this is to keep check on your PAB. And this is the benefit of something like a Kubernetes system that we're approaching, where we could kill the container if the container was taking up too much memory, and that won't affect the other pods, the other deployments within the same node. It'll just kill one container and restart it. But if the restart script is going to update the slot that it starts from, then it's going to be a pretty consistent system to be able to be in production as consistently as possible. Okay, so mediators.ai launch. This is what we've been waiting for. So we've got all this stuff up on the VM. We're trying for the Kubernetes instance, but we've got it running on the VM on both mainnet and testnet. We've done a whole lot of testing on testnet. We've got interns and employees and mediators and everyone testing what's there. And on mainnet, we've done several successful tests with transactions that get paid to ADR holders, and everything looks great. And so what we've launched is this mediators.ai platform. And mediators.ai platform is a predominantly and by nature a platform for mediation. And so what we can do with this platform is we can have a mediator sign up, and we can have a mediator schedule some time on the system to show when they're available and what specialties they have. And then we can have parties, who are the people seeking mediation, come in and select some time that works for them and try and negotiate time with another party who will join that mediation upon the original party's request. And so I'm gonna reshare and show you a little bit about what that looks like. So hold on a second. this. All right, so I have a mediator. This is just a sample mediator. No one should select this mediator, and we'll delete this mediator shortly. So we have this Eli Selkin plus mediator. You'll see they have no cases. This is what a mediator sees when they log in. If they've got cases that are ongoing, completed, or canceled, you can sort those with whatever sorting you choose, whether status type, last updated, fees, mediation dates, and you can take a look at my schedule. And so on my schedule, I've selected for today, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. But let's say we want to add some time for tomorrow, midnight to 4 a.m. Okay, so that person is going to add some time, and so now they have two availabilities, midnight to 4 a.m. So we'll take a look at that one tomorrow. And so if we look at my account, when I signed up, I said that I spoke English. I had a specialty of aviation, which means I can deal with all of your flight concerns. Anyway, and you can set your fee. And so you might say, well, what is this fee? This fee is in ADA. And it shows here the breakdown of that fee. So mediator gets 90% of whatever this fee is. There's a service charge of 9% that goes to the system, and then 1% of whatever that fee is goes to ADR token holders. So it'll pick an ADR token holder and give that person that amount of money. So it may be that somebody is going to have 200 ADA as their base rate, but some people may have 2,000. And you'll see that everything increases proportionally. But let's go back to 200. And so you'll see that there's frequently asked questions here also. How mediation is conducted, case cancellation, all that stuff. And you can ask for help if it's not covered on the frequently asked questions. All right, so now let's get down to mediation. Also, you'll see this wallet connected thing. I've already connected my wallet, but we're handling wallet. The wallet we want people to connect with is the Eternal wallet. The reason we chose the Eternal wallet is it was more stable than NAMI, and it really seemed to function correctly when we were connecting. So it has fewer errors that come from like transactions, and so things seem pretty good for Eternal. At some point, we might do what we do on Adatar Me, which is to have the ability to choose your wallet. The other benefit of using something like Eternal is it'll allow you to have multiple addresses. We'll talk about that at some other time. It's not really that important for this presentation. Anyway, so we've connected this. If we disconnect this DApp, the wallet from the DApp connector, and we reload the page, you'll see that it says connect Eternal wallet. It'll have a link to Eternal wallet, and we'll say, hey, how do you connect your wallet? Okay, when you sign up, there's a little how-to on how to connect your wallet. There's also a link here for the Chrome extension, but say we want to connect this wallet. If we reload, it'll say here wallet connected. That usually, if it's the first time, let's see. I don't know if I can forget this page anyway, but if it's the first time, even when you connect the wallet here as the DApp wallet, and you click on wallet connected, you'll click on it, and then it'll say, do you want to allow mediators.ai to use your wallet? And you'll say yes, and you'll connect it, and then you'll see this filled in circle. All right, so that's great. This is a mediator, but now let's take a look at signing up as a party. I can't remember if I signed up or not. Let me see. No, okay. So we're going to sign up as a party. We're going to say, my name is Eli, and we're going to do Eli Salkin at Loxe Inc. And let's say I speak English. Selecting a language here is important because we only select mediators that have the same spoken language as you. So if you selected just Spanish or just Portuguese, you wouldn't be able to see the availability that I created for my Eli Salkin mediator account. So we'll choose English just for that reason. You'll go through this process of having a passcode sent to you. It's an all number passcode. And then we'll give it some, choose one that I agree with this. All right. And so now we're logged in as a user. You'll see basically the same situations here with ongoing cases, completed cases, canceled cases. Your My Account looks a little different. It doesn't have those specialties. You can change your password, change your name, change your email, update your languages. You'll see the FAQ. And then on mediations, you'll see a new button up here. And this button is different. It's not on the mediators page. So if you do create mediation, you'll see here, okay, I'm going to create a new mediation, provide the details. So you'll select from the specialties for mediators that are available. And we had aviation as our sample case type. And then we're going to say Eli Salkin, let's say party 2 at loxeinc.com. So this is another person, not myself. If you tried to add yourself here, it would not work. You'll see the error message. It'll say email must be different than your email. So we'll say party 2. So this will be a new party. Oops. Yeah, I don't know when it's like.
Haha. Live demo.
Live demo. Okay, there we go. All right, so it says, hey, there's no mediators for this period, so we have to change the time. And remember, we made one at midnight. So if we select midnight, hey, you'll see there's an availability on tomorrow, where the mediator is between 200 and 200. That should be ADA. Notice an issue there. That'd be, like $100 or less than $100. And that's the total mediation cost for both parties. It would be half of that 200, so 180 each. And we'll see here the times that are available for that on the 27th are that midnight to 4 a.m. slot. And then you'll say, I agree to the terms of service. And then we say here, save mediation request. Okay, so what this does is it creates a case. And the other thing that will happen is it'll send an email to this eli.salkin party 2. And then I'll go into my email, say that I want to join mediators.ai. Just That's interesting. Okay, anyway, so we'll sign out here. We'll sign up here as Eli.Selfgan. Oops, Eli party 2. Oops. If I can spell, that would be great. And we'll say Eli.Selfgan party 2, loxeinc.com, and we speak English as well. So we'll create an account, and we'll check our email, we'll get our code, and then we'll say, well, I'm going to make my password the same as my other user's password. Bad form, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then we're going to log in, and you'll see the first thing that's different here is in the ongoing cases, you'll see this pending case with type aviation that the other party, Eli, has requested. And you'll click on pending, and you'll say, Eli asked me to buy his airplane. Okay. And so we'll see that the time that was available is the time that the other party selected. If they select more than one time will appear here, but we'll select this time. If there were more than one time and more than one mediator, this slider will have a range, but of course there's no range if it's between 200 and 200 ADA. And so we agree and we join this mediation. And then the next thing that will happen is you'll see a slightly different page here. So you'll see here, send funds of 100 ADA to escrow for this session. And if you do that, now I don't have 100 ADA in my account, so we'll see an error here of insufficient funds. I could add funds there, but for the most part, what happens is they'll send funds, and then it'll say insufficient funds because my wallet here on Eternal only has 8 ADA in it. So I can't complete this thing, but once both parties pay, then the mediator will see a new mediation appear. They will either accept or decline this case once both parties have paid. The mediator won't know who paid first because they only see a case when both parties have paid. And they can't tell from that who paid first. And then once the mediator accepts and then puts in a link like a Zoom link that'll appear here for the parties to join the mediation when it's time. And so for this case, it would be midnight to 4 a.m. on tomorrow. And the idea is when they get a new mediation, they can put the mediator can put the link, and then once the mediation time period is over, they can close the case. And when they close the case, that means that everything is done. And then when cases are closed, we're just about to release an edition where it's going to email out a survey that the parties have to complete, saying that, yeah, they resolved the case, no, they didn't resolve the case, how successful was the mediation, that sort of thing. Once a mediation is closed, a mediator can go in and retrieve their funds. And when they retrieve their funds, it'll do that split where it'll take the funds that the two parties have added and take out the 90% for that mediator, pay that mediator, And then the 9% will go to the system, and 1% will go to the Oracle and check which random person from the ADR holders was selected, and distribute the funds to that user. So that's pretty much the walkthrough of how a party signs up for mediation if you have that amount of money in your wallet, which I don't. I've done too much testing, and now my wallet doesn't have enough money. And it'll be too slow to start up Daedalus to transmit some funds to myself. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Let me see. Why don't I hand it back to you, Matthias, unless you want me to cover something else?
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really thrilled. Now I kind of feel that we launched too late, because I think if you're not slightly embarrassed by the product you're launching with, you launch too late. And I'm not embarrassed at all. Granted, there are things that I would like to see in there, but yeah, thank you so much, Eli. And I'll take over the screen if I can.
Yeah.
All right. So where are we? So if you go actually to mediators.ai right now, you'll actually see, hey, there's password protection. I cannot use that. Sorry, there's a reason for that. So, and the reason is that, as Eli mentioned, right, we have worked with some of our mediators that we know in our network pretty closely over the past several months, did a bunch of testing. Having them onboarded into Cardano and using the Eternal wallet was quite a story, because that is a requisite to even scheduling their availability and whatnot, right? So on testnet, we have worked closely with 60 mediators to find bugs and improve the user experience overall. And we'll essentially now, since we are last night ran a couple of final tests that depleted Eli's wallet. So maybe someone wants to share an ADATAR link to Eli's wallet for some tipping. No, just kidding. Actually not. Why not? Maybe some gimbals, I don't know. Anyway, so essentially we're trying to, so what's happening right now is that the onboarding that we did for the testnet for Mediators AI with the mediators, we want to build a supply on mainnet as well. So in our original proposal, which we thought, hey, PAB is going to be out in October, we're going to launch on mainnet in December, right? Yeah, that obviously didn't happen. As alluded to earlier, or actually addressed in great detail, we are now also bringing the mediators onto mainnet, right? And we have to, again, teach them a little bit more, because now the stakes are higher, really reiterate, this is how to keep your private keys secure and all of that, right? Because ultimately it's a livelihood, it's a profession. So that's going on. And by the end of the week, we'll have most likely the mass of mediators with all their availabilities that we feel confident to remove the password protection, so that you can actually, as a party, utilize the service. Also, I think you might have seen it in the demo right now, in the dropdown for what type of case we could. What type of case is my case, right? You only actually saw aviation, and that from the mediator's view, there were a lot more what we consider specialties, right? So the reason for that is that obviously we don't want to have a party sign up, go into great detail. Hey, this is the issue of the case, and then have no mediator available that actually can handle the case, right? So that is that as well. So it's building up the supply side. Initially in our proposal, we said 10 mediators onboarded, right? We had 16 that would work closely together. Everyone is very interested. So we're bringing that up, and by the end of the year, we actually plan to get at least 200 great active mediators on our platform. We in contact altogether in about 150, 157, I think is the exact number that we have communicated with. However, we also recognize that, you know, it doesn't take a university degree to work as a mediator. So we also have a Fund 9 proposal, mediation training and certification in the legal and financial implementation challenge. And that provides mediation training to members of the Cardano community, access also to, of course, mediators.ai and ongoing support to solve disputes within the Cardano community, but also beyond. So please make sure you vote yes on that, and maybe also take a look at proposal assessments if you're a VPA. Again, I'll be sharing the slides as well, so you'll have the link to the proposal if you haven't seen it. We're working with Renata Valerie, who's phenomenal instructor in Peacemaker. She has a tremendous track record. I've worked with her both in the capacity as a student, but also co-facilitator of some pretty transforming community disputes and positive outcomes. So also this slide mostly might look familiar, right? So on March 1st, I introduced the idea of Deflect. And despite the Cardano Foundation support, a dedicated conflict transformation challenge was not funded in Catalyst, but hey, so what? Remember, though, that one of the reasons for mediators.ai is to provide greater access to justice, right? So, of course, lowering the bar, bringing more people that can mediate into the system, but also still recognizing, and I understand this is not a perfect system with, you know, the low adoption, but there's a path going forward. And we have seen that with mediators having no idea about blockchain or cryptocurrencies actually signing up because the pain is just from the mediator side too much. And similarly, the pain of unsolved disputes for parties is there as well, right? So what we're doing, we launched our stake pool Loxe with the ticker Loxe a couple while ago, now been minting blocks on mainnet for quite a while. And in addition to that, we also have a Fund 9 proposal, Catalyst Mediation Treasury, that Victor put together for Loxe. It's also an illegal and financial implementation challenge. So with that, we are looking to build out a treasury that can be utilized by people that otherwise lack the necessary funds to resolve their conflicts through mediation, right? Can be through mediators.ai, of course, but it could, if there are any other platforms, there's a potential for that as well. So please take a look at that proposal as well and vote yes on it once voting starts. So you're probably eager to test mediators.ai, right? So in addition to using the site on mainnet, right, we would like to invite you to continuously test our dev environment and report bugs or suggestions, engage in discussions on our GitHub issue tracker. So dev.mediators.ai is open. So it'll have the most recent change of whatever gets pushed to dev. So things may and most likely will break, right? Keep that in mind. We have great additions mapped out to make the process more seamless. If you actually want to see the mediator side of you can contact us. There's a different sign-up process for that. It's a little bit hidden. Of course, keep in mind that any cases on the dev environment will actually not be mediated, right? Unless someone really wants to collect T-ADA. So just keep that in mind. Our mediators who are signed on the test platform also get a email saying, this is for test, right? So they'll see it. Just FYI. So this was our roadmap, right? Has been a little bit adjusted compared to when you saw it last year, right? But we're still on track overall with our roadmap to not only become a market leader, but a new market creator, right? Because this is really the opportunity. It is, in my previous pitches, I talked about, okay, we have 100 billion addressable market size for actually ADR in total, so mediation and arbitration, right? But if you think about the legal system globally, that's about, I don't know, $1 trillion or whatever, right? Who cares? But the thing is, it's really the lack of access to justice. A lot of our competitors are actually not interested in the type of people that we want to serve because it doesn't pay them well enough, right? But we, having created multiple marketplaces in the past, and also are good at spotting and reducing inefficiencies, know that no, these are people that we can serve and we should serve, right? As you heard, Eli and I, we met at a social good company before, serving the homeless in Los Angeles. And I've worked in startups in the US for 10 years or something like that. So even though most startups do not act in a way to make the world a better place, in all the places that I've been to, that actually was the mantra. So I think that's stuck somehow, right? So just keeping in mind that we aim for 90% market share in the growing industry, and we have a 16-year plan that is outlined actually in our white paper that you find on our website. That needs an update soon, because you can see launch date has been pushed a little bit for the reasons that we have addressed. So but we have many things going for us, right? We need a little bit more capital to accelerate our development and secure a dominant position in the industry. So the threats actually, right? A couple of months ago that had also another item like a stealth competitor that has more funds that can go to market earlier. Now we're launching, that threat is not really that real, right? Not saying there are not other competitors that want to see us burn, because there are, particularly a lot of lawyers. So that's why we make sure our terms and services are fine. But I think we have established ourselves as a key player in making the world a better place when it comes to the legal industry. So as Eli mentioned, you also heard, I know, and some of you invested in the ADR token. We still have ongoing token sale, which at this point in time, unfortunately, is closed to US persons. Sorry, because regulation is, because this is a security, right? Because you get a revenue share. So it'll close to Sunday. If you want to participate in that, tokens.loxeinc.com. If you have any questions, what you see regarding the white paper or in the placement memorandum, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to be part of that. And yeah, closing the Sunday. And this is all from us. So thank you again very much. Really, really appreciate the support of Gimbalabs, the Gimbalabs community. And of course, a big thank you to Eli and the team at Loxe making this a reality. We've had many people working with us over the past. Some of us are not working with us anymore because there's so many opportunities in the Cardano space, and we're still trying to figure things out as a startup ourselves. But it's all overwhelmingly been positive, even the people that we decided to not, for the moment, continue working together. The support has been tremendous. So I think we are on the right track. And with that, let's open this up to some Q&A.
Congratulations on getting this far, guys. I've got a heck of a lot more than 20 minutes worth of questions, so we'll stand back for a minute. What's everybody wondering about? I saw a great question from Dom in the chat earlier. Matthias, if you want to start with that one, or Eli, if you want to look at that. Did you consider other chain indexers? But feel free, everybody else, to raise your hand.
Yeah, Eli, do you wanna take over the other chain indexes?
Yeah, we've tried figuring out if something else will work with the PAB, but the PAB is pretty temperamental, we found. And the only one that we know for sure works and that's guaranteed is the chain index. We know that there's a couple others. Matthias put a question about this. I don't know, was it on what was that site? About yeah, about chain index questions. And we haven't found something that works particularly well. Dom, do you have experience with other chain indexers and the PAB?
Hi and hello to everyone. I don't have great audio, so I apologize if this is inaudible. Yes, it was really good to hear all of your story behind using the PAB, because it's been a swear word nightmare for me. And I have just walked away from it. I realized that for my use case, I didn't need almost everything that it was offering. I think it's quite visionary to think that like it was giving true decentralization, that everyone would be able to run their own dApps in the way that it was supposed to be, in the way that Ethereum hasn't managed to do. But as you say, like 220 gigabyte databases that keeps falling over is not something that you can decentralize.
Right.
So yeah, and I use something, and like the word has just escaped me. K2Z, he did Ogmios, and his chain indexer is Capi. I mean, I have a fork of it, which is now fit for purpose for dApps. Cupo, thank you. I feel like I'm an idiot now. Yeah, it's fit for purpose for dApps, and it's way lighter if you know a priori or slightly ahead of time which addresses are relevant. So between the user's wallet, which can provide data about the user's UTXOs, and your script addresses, Cupo can serve those purposes, and it is far more stable in my experience. As I say, I don't follow PAB's developments because it just caused too much of a headache. So I was interested that you put in your slide that it is now stable.
Well, okay, stable might be an overstatement. It is stable enough that we can run it and get the. So one thing that we've done is log intensely from the PAB, making sure that things are reliable. And we sort of developed this method of processing the logs and verifying that the content of what the logs has is what we expect to see from what the PAB was supposed to do and what the result was from the PAB. And so we seem to see a pretty consistent result, that everything seems to be what we expect it to be. We haven't seen anything that isn't what we expect it to be, and we haven't like lost any funds or directed something to the wrong script address. Everything seems to work. And one of the things that we had to do, or one of the reasons that we use the PAB is we could potentially use another method, like we could have Haskell and Plutus generate the script with some added data on a as needed basis, rather than as a function of an endpoint. Yeah, we chose the PAB for its intended consistency.
Fair. Thanks for sharing that. I don't want to hijack your whole Q&A, but I probably could, just with questions on your tech stack. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right, we got a question about the serialization library. Yeah, so we are using now the Emergo Cardano serialization lib rather than the DC Spark modified one. We attempted, so we had to do a sort of slight workaround because neither the Emergo lib or the modified DC Spark one were, or the Berry Pool one, it didn't we had trouble with the datum not being retrievable by the Plutus application backend. So Plutus, when it looks at the UTXOs, was not able to deserialize what the Emergo serialization library serialized into the script. And so we, or onto the blockchain. So there should be some datum or hash of the datum that was on the blockchain. But when we went to go read it, we would look at the blockchain. The blockchain would say, hey, there looks to be the hash on there. But when we go to Plutus and we attempt to retrieve that UTXO, look at the hash that was connected to that transaction, it doesn't find the data and it can't check that datum with the, or it knows the datum and it would try and verify the hash value and it wouldn't verify. And we don't know what the reason is for that. So none of the Emergo or modified Emergo libraries were able to handle that. And so we're trying to figure that out. We put some questions on there about this. And we tried using a slightly different approach. There's this company, Strika HQ, that created sort of a different way of serializing the data, but we didn't quite get there with that library either. It seemed like it was about to make it work, but then the Emergo serialization library. So the nice thing, the wallets that are being used work well with the information and the process of creating the transaction bodies and things like that that the Emergo serialization library puts out. But they don't really work so well with the Strika Typhon JS. And so we're still working on ways to handle that directly. Okay, now Matthias.
Yeah, Nin, if you don't mind, do you mind asking your question for the audience?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, guys. So which one do you want me to ask first?
I guess, can this be done programmatically, right? That was a conversation starter. Okay, so you're asking for programmatically access because you wanted to integrate into mediators.ai. Is that correct? What's a plan for that?
Yeah, for example, right? We have almost every project that is a marketplace type project like ours. We are building a marketplace for projects to post gigs and bounties to be able to connect with developers. That's going to go live like this Friday. And one of the use cases would be if, let's say, a project deems that the company deems that the project is not complete, but the developer says it is, then to be able to automatically assess and mediate this type of, if it gets escalated to that point. Do you guys have any plans for an SDK? Is this open source? Is there an API that we can use? Or can we integrate it without having users to go and sign up on your website and do the mediation there?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I'm glad to already see the demand for that. It is a question actually that came up from a couple of other Catalyst projects that we helped launch, actually, where we set the technological foundation. And I also had a conversation, I think it was in November or December or so, with Shopify, actually, because they also look to integrate into a online dispute resolution platform. Now, while Shopify, most of the 2 million merchants or so, this solution might not be appropriate because while mediation is a lot more cost-effective than arbitration or any type of court proceeding, you don't mediate over a $1.50 item, right? So, but granted, there are types of cases that could be mediated, and we saw in the greater Cardano ecosystem that mediation might be a useful tool. Funny enough, we won a prize at the Cardstarter hackathon, and they failed to make good on a promise and pay us on time. So ultimately, like what every functioning adult would do, I would bitch about it on Twitter, right? So, and luckily that was picked up by the Cardano community, and ultimately, we had a conversation and we talked. But it was all during the time where they already had that issue with SundaySwap, right? Where the litigation was already on the road. And funny enough, I told the Carter Schiff representative, essentially, hey, if you would have paid us on time, we could have developed faster. And by now, we might have already had mediators.ai, so you actually don't have to go to court with SundaySwap, but actually mediate this dispute, and you'd be actually done with this whole ordeal. It's pretty much probably still ongoing. I mean, it's litigation, right? So there's a need in the greater Cardano community, and then of course programmatically integrate. So we actually had envisioned the underlying functionality of essentially the connecting piece of dispute resolution specialists to parties, right? Something that we essentially also have with a recently closed out Project Catalyst project, where for some reason they actually forgot to mention that we did that. But the technological level, right? But we utilize technologies like Neo4j, to connect the piece. And that whole kind of back-end layer, right? And how that integrates into the PAB or sending transactions, right? That is ultimately what we want to open source. Or at the very least, provide an API, and the next step would be an SDK, right? So that not only additional marketplaces or brokerages really is the more appropriate term, because disputing parties don't select the mediators directly, right? We give them the best, the most suitable mediator that's available that meets the criteria for the case, right? We assign them. And usually the expectation is for the mediator to accept the case. But if they discover, for example, a conflict of interest, then that's the time where they decline the case and it goes to the next qualified mediator. But anyway, so the goal always, the conversation has always been like, okay, let's build the space layer. The idea of Deflect actually started there, right? It's essential, decentralized functional ledger ecosystem for conflict transformation with this platform that can be applied to mediation, arbitration. That's going to be a big one that we tackle next year. And then, but also more proactive services, ombud services, kind of like business coaching, but instead of productivity and being agile, it's like, hey, maybe learn how to be fucking human and have no people quit on you because you treat them as trash and it's as disposable. I mean, Great Resignation is a US thing, right? Or
that's how you deliver that message, right? Just like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we always intended to be a provider and an enabler for other conflict transformation services, and I guess also dispute resolution services, to be built on top of our infrastructure and really connecting the pieces in a decentralized fashion, but in an integrated fashion. So that's the goal. There are many pieces leading to that. So I'm not exactly sure when we can deliver on an API. There are some internal processes that we have to figure out so we can actually improve our diagnostic control systems, so we know what are our critical performance metrics and how are we doing on those to make any promises of future development, because that's something that I've been lacking over the months, and I guess which also led, despite all the third-party problems, to some of the delays that we experienced. So to answer your question, yes, it'll be there. I guess I can say October, but I'm not telling you which year. So yeah, I hope that kind of answered your question.
Thank you. That leads me to a second question, right? I think what you guys are building is pretty valuable if you are able to like cut down from 6 months to a week, for sure, for the whole industry. Usually people come to mediators or they're assigned by a court or some kind of process similar to arbitration. It is I talked to a professional mediator and they're like, they take a lot of pride in what they do. So I'm curious, like you have mentioned, like you guys have a game plan for bringing on mediators, but how about like businesses or users actually who are going to need the mediation, right? Where's the adoption plan there?
Yeah, so the overall strategy has been to really focus on the supply side so that we can make good on the promise to make sure that the dispute actually gets resolved within a week, right? So there's a couple of avenues, actually, a couple of experiments that we run. So part of our, we also had a funded catalyst proposal, the win-win expansion to LATAM, right? So with that, for example, part of implementing the proposal, it's of course the localization into Portuguese and Spanish, which we're almost done, but then also bring mediators on board that speak those languages and are comfortable mediating in those languages. What we found actually in Brazil, where Victor Porcino is based, is that mediation has a very different type of or level of status when it comes compared to the US, for example, right? Nina, I heard you say, mediators take pride in what they do. And that's also my experience with professional mediators in the US. So Victor has a family friend. She's a lawyer, but also practicing mediator for a couple of decades. And he had no idea that she was a mediator until, talking to, her about it. And it was quite fascinating. So in Brazil, actually, like you said, there are strategies to get into the court system. One of our advisors, the former ambassador of the ES to Zimbabwe, Ambassador Steve J. Rhodes, he's one of our advisors. He has connections to the court system in LA, but also across the US, and has connections, right, to governments. So court mandated mediations, what you have with family law, for example, in California, right? That is an avenue that we try to pursue through that way. Because adoption also sometimes is a lot easier if it's mandatory, versus giving people the choice that they have to use you. So that's an avenue that we pursue, right? Because we think our product is better because a lot of court-mandated mediation is shuttle diplomacy. Parties actually never talk to each other, which is not mediation. On the other hand, in places like Brazil, right, we are actually going after pre-litigation family disputes, right? So that doesn't even have to, that's not a matter necessarily of divorce or domestic violence or child custody, none of that. That can be as simple as, hey, siblings not talking to each other, or talking, but then it escalates and they don't go anywhere. So the cases like that, and this is the new market opportunity essentially, because these types of cases are usually not resolved. Our biggest competitor is not Claris. By the way, Claris was a thing on, or is a thing on Ethereum. We have the former research fellow actually signed up as a mediator. He's doing technology disputes. So it's not Claris, it's not ADR services, it's not AAA or FINRA, which are big arbitration associations in the US and worldwide. It's not the mom and pop mediator agency. Our biggest competition is really non-competition. Because in our study last year, that actually is in line with the findings the California State Bar in 2019 found that most people experience a dispute in any given year that is worth going to court to, but people do not have the resources or perceive not to have the resources to solve those disputes, meaning time and or money. And we can allow for that. So we're taking all of big issues, right, that might not appear as big issues, but they affect your day-to-day life, and we can help solve those disputes, right? Essentially making the world a better place, but also get a bigger market. So this is one of the strategies that we try in Brazil. Of course, the Cardano community in itself, we have many initiatives, many community initiatives that recognize there's a lot of community disputes, and we're not always the best at listening to each other and talking to each other. Some sub-communities are great at that, but we also want to provide them more of an incentive to pick it up a notch in professionalism and actually have real outcomes at the end where people agree on each other. One thing really quick, I know it's already 12:30, my local time, and there's another great session coming up. But I read in one of the proposal assessments that mediation essentially has not a big impact, right? As I mentioned, that cannot be further from the truth. When I found what was actually working in 2001, why people did not continue to kill each other in North Macedonia, was not because I was there with a G36, right? It wasn't that. It was because there was a mediated agreement that is just 4 pages, the ORIT framework agreement, you can look it up on the internet, that brought the parties together and they agreed on a couple of principles. And then over the next years, they actually implemented it, giving greater rights to all parties and actually seeing eye to eye. And that's the power of mediation. It works on an interpersonal level. It works on the nation level. And today, North Macedonia is ranked the 34th most peaceful country in the world based on the Global Peace Index. Just for comparison, and by the way, that's all Balkan states are better off than, let's say, the US, which is ranked at spot 131 out of 163 nation states or territories tracked. So the power of mediation is there. I truly believe that what we're doing is important, and that's why we found the company, and that's why we're building this. And Cardano, while not perfect in terms of technology and tooling, I think we made the right choice there. But most importantly, it's a community, and I think the community will be essential in making this a success, rolling it out to our friends in the real world that might not be as active in the Cardano community yet, and that is going to be part of the overall early innovation adoption strategy. Not talking early adoption, that's going to be another story, but here we are. Got to start here.
When are you guys coming back again?
I don't know. I mean, we have many things that we want to do, but
we love talking here, especially with you around.
So many more questions, guys. I mean, just thinking about what you've learned about the tech stack, I would love to reach out to both of you offline and see if we can get you working with an expert group of Plutus PBL devs. There's already some people who are starting to recognize some of these design problems firsthand, and it's just awesome that you guys have been through it. Yeah, similar with building a bona fide business with the legal structure to have a security token, which is kind of rough on us here in the US, but is for the greater industry, it's incredible you guys are leading the way on so many of these things. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. I want to share one more thing. A good place to also, if you're already building or planning to build on our Cardano, the Cardano builders, it's a meetup every other Monday. Put a link to meetup group there. It's a great place to bitch about the state of Cardano technology as well, but at the same time also get some helpful advice and how to address some of these challenges. So that's also a great resource as well.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, thanks, friends, and feel free to stay